Hello, I'm Amy Yee, and this is Wired for Change. Today we're going to look at the second episode of my mini-series on the Transformation Dream Team. One of the most critical aspects of success for just about any initiative is the team that you bring to the table, and in transformation, that would be even more so. Over the years, I've looked at patterns and the people who help to make transformation successful, and I've tried to capture them in a framework to help others sort of think about who they want to pull into their transformation dream team so that they can be successful too. I'd ask you to refer to the first episode in this series, which was about execution and innovation. That's available on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts, everywhere where you can find my podcast. You can look at the first 3 rules that I talked about at that point and how I tied them together to help to deliver on execution as well as innovation. Today's episode goes to the heart of change, and it's really about people. So episode 2 is the human side of change: culture, courage, and connection. And I'm excited to bring that to you today. So let's dive in. Today, we're looking at 3 rules that shape the human side of digital transformation: the change leader, the change navigator, and the change whisperer. Now, these aren't formal titles that you'll find on a job application or posted in your organization, likely, but they're 3 transformation archetypes that relate back to rules that we have today, but amped up a little bit just for transformation. And you'll see what I mean. Each one really plays a unique role in helping teams believe in change, to move through it, and to stay connected where technology's processes and expectations often shift. So the first role we'll look at is someone that I've often thought of as the charismatic leader, but I'm going to call them the change leader for today. So the change leader sets the tone, not by just pointing to a bold destination, but by giving people a reason to believe and a reason to go on, even when things go wrong. This leader will communicate hope, transparency, urgency, and a shared purpose in a way that rallies momentum. The reason that I used to call this person the charismatic leader is just that you need, and I don't want to call it charm, but you need someone who's really able to inspire trust, communication, who's able to foster a safe environment. And I've kind of thought of, the opposite as being someone who is grumpy, that people are afraid of or no one wants to talk to. That type, while it can be a strong leader in some settings, often isn't a part of the really successful transformations that I've seen. So in order to explain a little bit more about these archetypes, I've chosen a historical character for each one to represent the type of leader as an example to help illustrate my point. So for the change leader, what I've done is I've chosen John F. Kennedy. A little bit about John F. Kennedy. He lived from 1917 to 1963, the 35th president of the United States. And he's remembered for leading the U.S. through a time of deep uncertainty and transformation. His presidency saw the height of the Cold War, the early days of the Civil Rights Movement, and the dawn of the space age. What made Kennedy stand out wasn't just policy, it was his ability to inspire. In 1961, he committed the country to landing a man on the moon before the decade's end. Not because it was easy, but because it was hard. That declaration, known as the Moonshot Speech, transformed an abstract ambition into a national movement. He also helped establish the Peace Corps, challenged Americans to serve something greater than themselves, and used televised addresses to bring the public closer to the complex geopolitical decisions, all hallmarks of transformational communication. So again, to go back to that shifting of charismatic leader to change leader, because this role isn't about charm, it's about catalyzing belief and coordinated movement, often across very diverse functions and teams. It's about getting people to adopt a vision as their own. In a digital transformation context, this might be the executive who paints a compelling vision for an organization through a time of change, like launching a new product or getting through an existential crisis or managing risks, looking at how to embrace technologies and changes in the environment that challenge the organization to change from what they've been to what they need to be in order to future-proof the organization. They speak to frontline providers and policymakers in ways that move both hearts and budgets. To contrast this with the other two roles I'll be talking about today, the Change Navigator and the Change Whisperer, while the Navigator ensures smooth execution and the Whisperer earns trust from within, the Change Leader needs to activate urgency and belief from the front. They are the spark for change and an ongoing fire from a spark that helps even when the fire seems like it's about to cool. Have you ever been part of a transformation where someone's belief and clarity changed everything? I think that when I think about transformations that I've been a part of, some of these points, when it seems clearest, is not when everything is going well and according to everyone's expectations, but when things are changing or there's an unexpected crisis at hand. The change leader who is able to help to reinforce the belief and help people to understand how it translates into action and reaction and how to be proactive moving forward with respect to whatever this challenge is, that is the one who I would consider a change leader. It's in the face of change, in addition to the changes that are being orchestrated from within. It's that person that helps, keep things on the rails or helps to help people understand, where we need to go and how to react and not overreact. What did this say or do that, made you commit? Like, when have you had a leader that has helped you to remain committed or to commit to something that's a little bit different? I'd love to hear what you think about that. I'm going to move on to the next role, which is the Change Navigator. So for this role, I've chosen the Empress Dowager Cixi from China. She is someone who really created a lot of change. And I guess when I think about the Change Navigator and relate that back to a familiar role to all of us, it would be the role of the Change Management Leader. The Change Navigator is the one who guides people through disruption. Where others see chaos, they see patterns. They're responsible for the pacing and emotional choreography of change. Empress Dowager Cixi, from 1835 to 1908, rose from a concubine to become the ruler of China for nearly 50 years. She led through a period of enormous internal instability and external pressure, including the Opium Wars and foreign imperialism. Though often labeled conservative, she pushed key reforms to modernize China's military, economy, and diplomatic engagement. In 1862, she established the Tongwen School of Combined Learning, a foreign language and international studies school to prepare diplomats and modern servants. This institution played a crucial role in equipping China to navigate a rapidly changing global context. So why did we name this role the Change Navigator and move away from the Change Management Leader, which is more typical? We wanted to emphasize that change isn't linear, and success lies in reading the winds, adjusting the course, and keeping the crew together. A modern day example, in a corporate setting, this might be a VP of operations role who realizes the change management timeline for when a system overhaul is unrealistic and negotiates phased implementation to protect team well-being and maintain momentum. And like a change leader who energizes from the front, the change navigator often works from the center, coordinating, course correcting, ensuring progress without burnout. They are in those meetings, day to day, understanding the change that needs to take place and helping to manage not just the dream team, but the expectations of all the different groups of interest and the parties of interest across the organization and external to the organization as well. So I would ask you, when have you seen a transformation succeed because someone took the time to navigate, wisely? And they're someone who works with the change leader quite closely often as well. When I think about my own experience, I'd say that consultation with existing clients, with clients who have been with you for some time, as well as clients who might be new, have been an essential part of navigating a change from within. This was essential. They have been with you and experienced, success and challenges. And if you've gone through a crisis, they're the ones who will help to communicate the feedback in terms of what they've experienced. If you're looking at a roadmap, for example, for your product development and for the changes that you're promising, getting their feedback is essential, and then helping to manage their expectations as you move along your roadmap is also key. And that sometimes is a complex navigation between clients because they may not always agree, between your clients and your internal teams, between your clients' internal teams and the roadmap that you set for the organization in terms of your funding and your path to continuity along everything that you're doing as well. This can be a really complex navigation, and you can't forget, the past that your customers and your internal teams may have lived through. Perhaps they tried and they failed, and perhaps you need to show that you're navigating that and you're moving through that in a way that makes sense for everyone and in a way that is sustainable. There's lots here to dig into when you're navigating change and you're ensuring that the roadmap reflects something that is realistic and also meets expectations, because it is such a key part of building trust. The third role or archetype that we'll look today is the change whisperer. This relates back to someone you might have internally who's your influential insider role. They're someone who is that peer bridge builder. They've got that informal network that is so critical to transformation. They know all the different players and they hear from those different players, and they can share that with you if you're someone that they trust and if they understand where you're trying to go. They build bridges between old ways and new ways, and they know what is tolerable for people and what the thresholds of acceptance might be that are unspoken quite often in the meetings that you might have or in the existing feedback loops. That is gold for you as a change leader or as part of a transformation dream team yourself. The historical figure that I've chosen here is Harriet Tubman. She lived from 1822 to 1913 and escaped slavery and then returned more than a dozen times to rescue others via the Underground Railroad. She used her deep knowledge of terrain, weather, and human behavior to lead enslaved people to freedom. Later, she served as a spy for the Union Army and advocated for women's suffrage. So relating her role to transformation or her history to transformation, Tubman didn't use speeches or decrees. She used earned trust and personal courage. Her success came from guiding principles, step by step, through terrifying but necessary change, helping them to believe that they could survive what lay ahead. Now, why did we use the name Whisperer? It's because, as Harriet did, she didn't broadcast the change. She embodied it. And in doing so, a whisperer moves along, quietly and helps to move others along in a way that feels trusted and safe. Think of a nurse who has been quite senior in her role and who's been through, 3 EHR rollouts or EHR rollout attempts. She isn't on the change management, committee, but when she tells her peers, this one's different and I think it's worth trying, people listen. While the change navigator designs the journey, the whisperer walks it with people. Their power comes from credibility, not control. And that is a really important concept, the credibility that they have. They've walked in the shoes of the people who are walking through the change. It's great if they've walked in more than one person's shoes, if they've walked, on both sides of the change. The more people and the more paths that they've walked, usually the better, because they can bring together perspectives that you might not have at your fingertips. And they will bring back the candid feedback that you need in order to guide and design your path forward. So I would ask you to think, who are the quiet change whisperers within your organization? Who has the potential to be that change whisperer for you? Some organizations think of them as change champions or as super users sometimes, but it's a little bit more than that. That person is really in there and they have the influence, often informal, to help make things smoother for everyone involved. They are critical. And it's not a role that you can often hire for. They have to want to see the change succeed as well. When I think about these three rules, they form the human infrastructure of digital transformation. And they're not the only ones, but they are three key ones that I would urge you to think about, whether they're formally on your digital transformation dream team or informally a part of that team. The change leader sets the tone, the change navigator charts the course, and the change whisperer builds the trust that makes movement possible. That trust doesn't always come from the other roles. This is a special kind of bond and trust that that person has, or if you're fortunate, more than one person has, with others in the organization and external to the organization. In digital transformation, we often obsess about tools, cloud migrations, AI models, CRM systems, but none of it works if the human part of this change is not there too and doesn't move as well. These three roles, the change leader, the change navigator, and the change whisperer, are what makes the leap from strategy to reality possible. What role do you find yourself stepping into most often? Is there one that you gravitate to? Maybe there's one that your current role naturally lends itself to, and maybe it's just a bit of a tweak or an adjustment or some insights that you can learn from that help to make your transformation role even more transformational for what you're trying to drive. And more importantly, who do you need beside you in your transformation dream team? These are just some of the roles that I think about when I think about transformation and when I think about setting things up for success. I would love to hear what you think. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of Wired for Change. If you're listening to the audio version of this podcast, I thank you and wanted to let you know that I've also created graphics that go along with each of the digital transformation archetypes on the Dream Team. You can find out where to get them at my website at www.wire-for-change.com. Thanks so much for listening. Bye-bye.